All right, guys, so if you know me, you know I love black and white conversions. And this is why this action set is so, in my opinion, so powerful and so fun and so inspiring. And I use these actions all the time. Even if I'm not entirely sure what I want, I push one of these just to explore. And they do so many different things in terms of black and white converting. So I've got a couple of samples here which I'm going to walk you through. But what I want to mention up front is that black and white converting, especially, if you do it in Photoshop when you have a little more flexibility, though the raw processors out there are getting really, really good now in terms of some masking and whatnot. When you do a black and white conversion, you have almost infinite different variations. No, maybe not as many as color, but, at least not perceptually. But those little nuances, the way you sort of process a black and white conversion or monochrome conversion can make or break your shot. For example, let's look here before we run any actions. This shot right here is in color by my friend Ryan Pramick. He shot the car. And then this down here is the same exact shot. All I did was desaturate. That's it. In this case, I did Shift Command or Shift Control U, and that does a removal of all color. There you go. That is a desaturation. Now, if we were to kind of just take a look at these shots a little more in detail here, you notice that it's a gray version, and it's fine. It's completely fine, at least on the surface. You could pass that as a black and white version of the shot, and fabulous. It's great. Or is it? Maybe there's some other things you can do. And that's what these actions hopefully facilitate, is you exploring black and white converting in simple, really fast, efficient ways, right? So let's go to our color version of the shot here, and let's start running some of these actions. You can see we have a pile of them, okay? There's a bunch of them. I think there's like 70 of them or something like that. So let's go to Monochrome Basic 2. We run it. Okay, it looks almost exactly like just a desat, and that's fine. It's a perfectly lucid result. Is completely valid, if you will, right? Looks great. Let's delete that. Let's try Monochrome Boost 2. What's that about? Okay, so it looks similar. It's probably going to be difficult to see on the video, but it has a tiny little bit more contrast. And as you can see, the way it's built, it has a way to make it monochrome, and then it has a highlight booster, right? Which is just kind of using a blend, if very, very subtle, very hard to see. But of course, when these actions are run, they're not permanent. You can keep playing. So you can change the settings around to, on the black and white adjustment layer, in this case, you can keep messing with that to tweak exactly like you like it. But you can also just delete and keep going. What is monochrome shine to? Okay, look at that. The car has a different brightness to it. It has a different sort of strength to it compared to our default sort of desaturation. Interesting. Okay, let's delete that. What is monochrome shine 5? Okay, everything's a little lighter overall. We got some deep blacks in there, but it's still a little lighter. The sky is notably darker, right? Okay, let's keep going. Let's try Monochrome HD1. It's doing some kind of cool process, right? What could that be? Let's take a look. All right, so now we have a bunch of tools here. The highlights have been reduced. The shadows have been increased, and then there's a desaturation on top, some auto contrast you can turn on and off, etc. It's just a way to kind of give a little bit of an HD look, if you will. That's why it's called Monochrome HD. Play with that on different shots. All right, what's Monochrome Haze 2? Why not? Let's take a look at that. Very different feel now, right? You could call that, I guess, retro. You could call it like a vintage print or something like that, like a newspaper if you wanted to. It's just a hazy black and white, which sometimes is exactly what your shot needs. Maybe not this amazing track monster car, but you never know what your shot might need. Monochrome Haze Extreme. What is that? Look at that. That's almost a graphic designer method of making a background or something, right? Could be cool for what you're after. You see where I'm going with this. And there's so many other options. We have one called Gritty 4, and that one adds a little bit of a gritty edge to it. There's even noise in there, which you can see. See, it adds a little bit of noise to it, makes it look a little bit vintagey, I guess you can call it that. Just give it some spice. So what about if that isn't working for your race car shot? Okay, you don't necessarily want that. Well, what about like a portrait? Let's look at this portrait here. What if we explore Monochrome Haze 1? Okay, look at that. We have now a mood. We've created a mood, and we have the layers here that we can play with to make modifications and adjust if we want. What about, let's do that gritty again. Let's do Gritty 3 on this one. Wow, look at that. That's super gritty. That might be too much. Scale that back. No big deal. What about Gritty 1? Okay, very, very similar, but it has a different noise layer here that you can then scale back if you want to on opacity. You see the endless flexibility here. It gives you a starting point based on my kind of warped brain of how I like to do different looks. And then you can tweak from there. You can adjust. Not to mention there's other things you can click, like extra with extra compression on it. Look at that. That could be a cool compressed look that completely changes the feel of the shot. Completely in a different direction, right? Okay, what about monochrome tonal shadows? Let's take a look at that. You must be on a pixel layer because it's going to use some pixel data. There you go. Look at that. See, the shadows have some tonal texture in them that otherwise they wouldn't have if it didn't process it the way I did. Very, very simple. Deep skin. Got to start from raster data as well. Let's see what that does. I know what it does, of course. It deepens the skin. It'll select the skin and then just add a little depth to it to kind of give a, depending on how you want to look at it, it can look like a suntan, but can also just give a different vibe. And there's different levels of it, right? So there's that, which is kind of cool. Now it reminds me, let's go back to our car shot because we have deep sky. Let's go deep sky 2 and run on that. You're going to need pixel data. It always preserves, if you start in the background, it'll preserve it, or from a stamped layer, it won't delete it. Now look at that. We have darken the sky, and that also is by itself. See, burn sky, it's always separated by itself. That could be really cool for lots of different applications to make a shot look interesting, for lack of a better term, right? Okay, what about this shot? It's just kind of a studio-ish portrait in a house that I did. Okay, how about let's see here, monochrome mixer 1. Let's see what that does. Ooh, look at that. Added a lot of depth and deep shadows into the shot, made up of multiple layers. You can turn on and off the contrast booster. You can turn it on and off the compressor, all kinds of things. There's an autocon in there that you can turn on and off or scale back the opacity. All right, what is a monochrome swirl 3? Let's take a look at that. Different feel as well. The shadows are a little more pronounced. There's more details in the shadows. They're not completely obliterated. Sometimes you want that, sometimes you don't. Monochrome glow 2. Let's see what that's about. Okay, it literally creates like a little hazy glow kind of feel. Interesting. All right, I'm going on and on, but you see what we're talking about. Exploring monochrome is such an exciting thing. You can do it manually, and these tools encourage you to do it manually. So for example, let's go to another shot we haven't touched yet. It encourages you to do it manually, just to kind of repeat. So if I come here and say, okay, monochrome deep skin, no, which one do I want to do here? These are going to do some AI functions like subject and background, which I forgot to show, but those are really, really cool. But how about monochrome random grad con 2? Let's explain that one. Tap it. Now you're presented with a gradient map, okay? And you have this dialog that's open. What you're supposed to do is go into the gradient, click it, right? And then down here, there's this randomize button. Just keep clicking that. And now you're going to get various pretty high contrast variations on how to explore that black and white look. Hit OK, hit OK. There it is. You can always double click, go back in, and randomize some more. And that range is going to be a little more broad for contrast, right? But you can also say random grad deep, right? Okay, so let's come in here and hit randomize, and they're all going to be a little deeper and a little darker until you get something that you might like. Not because you shouldn't know what you want, but sometimes you don't. And sometimes you want to be inspired. You want to see what sticks. Hit OK, and go. And just to be thorough, let me go ahead and delete that. Just to be thorough, let's go ahead and do the bright one. So now as you can see, as you randomize, everything is relatively bright to get a different look. It looks like it's just darkening and brightening, but if you actually do this on your real computer, you'll see the nuances of how the shaping of the colors is changing depending on how that contrast sweep is. So it's a lot of fun to explore and see what's possible. In fact, let's go back and take a look at the Shelby shot one more time, because there's also subject plus background control, right? So you hit that one, need background data as well. Maybe not background data, but you need raster data or pixels. It's going to use an AI function to select the subject, and then it's going to inverse that for the background, allowing you to control these things independently, which I do more than I talk about. So if I were to come here to the, a curve and deepen it, I can increase the shadow behind her if I needed to, right? Just to make it a little deeper, or I can soften the shadow behind her, right? Immediately creating a different vibe. Because if I brighten the shadow, I have a certain vibe there. And if I go back to her, I can also maybe bring down the highlights a bit, keep the shadows up. Now I've created a low contrast kind of situation. Or I can also, let's go back. We could increase the contrast on her. That's an awful lot. Let's just scale that back to something usable. Something like that. And then on the background, instead of lightening it, again, we're going to darken the background. Look at that. We've created a completely different feel just because we have the tools set up. So let the computer process for a little bit, get the AI selections in there, and then you can tweak that black and white exactly how you need it to be, right? So again, that's just, in fact, this one here, because the two opposing masks are the exact opposites, that's going to create a fringe. So instead of having any color bleed through, which won't happen anyway, we have a desaturation on top just to guarantee there's no color bleed through. So you see, again, kind of what all these tools allow you to do. I want you to play with them. Again, they're not expensive, like none of our actions are, but you can explore so many different ways of doing more than just simply a desaturation. And sometimes you can be genuinely surprised. You can, find something that you never would have thought of. And suddenly now the black and white is like, oh, okay, I wouldn't have done that, but that's super sick. I'm glad. Look at that one. Added a lot of tonal contrast to the paint that maybe I wouldn't have done on my own, right? That's what's cool about black and white conversion. Like I said, guys, just as exciting as color grading in my world and far better than just simply a desat. It can transform your image completely. Like, for example, what is, let's do monochrome subject 3. Let's see what that's about. Again, you're going to need pixels. Obviously, I'm lying. I know what these things are about, but just bear with me. Let's do the subject selection. And then there we go. We have some kind of result. Let's see what's going on. Okay, it's a little funky, but that's all right. We can play with it. So we're burning the background, which is a little strong with levels. We can scale that back or do the opacity. And the background, we probably should, the subject. We need to darken that a little bit. Maybe we don't, maybe we do. Does not matter. So many different choices. Then we have a compressor on top to create different looks. And again, as you play with all of this, you'll start realizing the ones you like more than others. There might be some that you'll never use and some that you go back to all the time and then adjust from there, right? So here's monochrome depth 4. Look at that. It just creates kind of a darker mood, more subdued. And then if we go back to our original car shot, why not? Let's run one more. Which one we haven't done yet? We've done boost. Those are super fun. How about tonal con shadows? Let's look at that tonal con shadows on the car shot. That's very interesting, because what's happened here is that now we've actually introduced a tonal contrast boost to the shadows. So now it gives it almost an HDR feel. I really don't want to use that term, but it almost gives it an HDR feel by kind of expanding and blossoming that mid-tonal contrast in the shadows so they don't get lost and muddled up in a black and white conversion. And that adds some grit to the shot, potentially. This is how I'm interpreting it. You're welcome to interpret it however you want. But that's what is cool about these tools. They're not just set up some tools that you can play with. They give you instant results, which is great, but it also has flexibility so you can run something and then make adjustments from there. So check it out. Like I said, not expensive. Some minor changes to the existing actions, but these have been around for a while and I love using them. Every time I try to make new ones for myself, I realize that I'm being redundant, that this collection of them pretty much does just about everything I want. We also have LUTs that do very, very similar, that of course that can be applied to video, and they're more like fully thought out looks that can be applied as a LUT. And those are separate because we used to offer them together, and I found that there were two different customer bases, and they were like, I don't need LUTs. I don't care about LUTs. And they almost do the same thing. So we have the vast majority of these available as LUTs as well, especially for video. They work supremely well for that. And I kind of made them more with video in mind. So if you have any questions, let me know. Leave a comment below, of course, as usual. And like I said, expand your mind a little bit if all you've been doing is desaturating. There's so much more out there.